if there's ever kind of some work like that to do, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll spend 100 hours a week doing that. I don't mind.
Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Garret Fitzgerald, who owns one of the most exciting and hottest new restaurants to open up in Dublin in the last couple of years. It's called Chimac and it does the best Korean fried chicken in Dublin. And I can personally say it was one of the best things I ate in all of 2020. If you haven't already done so, click the subscribe button to get brand new episodes every single week directly to your feed. Garret, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks a million for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
No bother. We're going to get straight into it because I have loads to talk to you about. I ate in Chimac, your beautiful restaurant, back in July, my first time there, and I don't know how to describe it, except it was bloody delicious.
Yeah, it's good and crispy.
Yes, for sure. So before we get into all things Chimac, can we start by getting your background?
Yeah, I suppose my background is in all things food and drink. I was studying history in Trinity and I finished it. I didn't like it very much, so I started working in kitchens then. And then when I finished college, I was working in kitchens, and I finished college. I met up with Tom Gleeson, who started up Bunsen, and I actually I was the head chef there for the first one on Wexford Street back in 2013, a long time ago now. And worked there for just over a year, and then I shipped off to San Francisco to pursue my dream of becoming a brewer. So I actually was over in San Francisco, and then I worked as a brewer there and in kitchens there as well to supplement my income, because being a brewer, you don't make very much money. And then I came back to Ireland and still was working in breweries. I was working for a company called Wicklow Wolf for 2 years, and then I pretty much went over to Korea and tried Chimac, which is essentially, Chimac is a compound word in Korean, which means chi means chicken and mak means beer, or maekju. So just the two of them together, kind of the marrying of both my passions is good food and good beer. So yeah, so there's a heavy emphasis in Chimac on we've got an extensive beer list that I like to rotate. We usually have eight ones that I have on all the time, and then I'll have 2 rotating in all the time.
Very good. And before we get into Chimac, I'd love to ask you about, so you said that you worked for Tom Gleeson and Bunsen. Obviously a huge success story, right? Can you kind of tell me a little bit, I suppose, because this is kind of a business, the Restaurant of Business podcast. Did you learn much from working for that group in terms of like business and what you're doing now with Chimac?
Yeah, I definitely learned a lot from Tom. Learned a lot about kind of sticking to your core principles. Like Tom is very, very, like Tom's a good friend of mine. Tom is would be very fundamental about this. There's one way to do things, and this is the way we do things. And definitely learned a lot from that. Yeah, I think the reason I got involved with Bunsen in the first place was just that was the kind of food that I wanted to be involved in, fast casual. Tom happened to be opening the first kind of single menu focused fast casual restaurant in Ireland, and I just heard about it and really wanted to be involved. And yeah, I think Tom definitely taught me a lot about everything, about just how to run people, how to run the business, everything.
Very good. Wow, I'm not here to obviously talk all day about Bunsen, but I'm a massive fan of it. I think it's deadly. But I keep their menu in my wallet all the time, and I work a lot with new startup restaurants, and it's the kind of one thing that I always show people starting a restaurant is the Bunsen menu as kind of an example of of keeping your menu small and focused. I think it's probably the best example out there, right?
Yeah, definitely. The menu is a great little idea, and just the fundamental process of, like, I mean, the fundamental thing with Bunsen is that it's such an unbelievable product. I mean, there's so much care put into every facet of the food. Everything is being thought about from start to finish, which is just a great thing to learn about when you're learning from someone like that. Like, for instance, the meat comes in from FX Buckley's every day and is minced freshly on site, which I think is just, if you're going to do something that's mince orientated, it has to be minced fresh. I just got a mincer attachment for my KitchenAid, which is deadly for fecking about with any kind of recipes or anything like that, or making burgers, anything. It's just, yeah, I think you have to mince it fresh.
Excellent. And okay, let's fly into Chimac, because I've loads of questions about that. But can you bring me back to I suppose, and I think my listeners would find this very interesting. A lot of them are kind of restaurant owners. The process of opening up Chimac, and like even in terms of like trying to get the unit and stuff like that, because obviously, you know, we all hear stories about Dublin being notoriously difficult and expensive and all these types of things. So could you talk us through that process?
It's worse than what you hear.
Okay.
No, we so like me and my partner Sofie, we wanted to open up Chimac for maybe 3 years until we got an actual crack at it. So actually 3.5 years pretty much.
Wow.
November 2016, we went over to Korea and we thought of the idea, just loved the concept of chicken and beer. Came back about a year later, quit our jobs and started looking at going full time at it. And we got a fryer. I got a little countertop link hat fryer in my house and made my whole house stink. It still stinks of oil. Can't get rid of that smell. But yeah, so that was like 3 years constantly looking for units. Like, yeah, the unit we ended up getting, we had to do loads of work to. It was actually used to be a doctor's surgery that had been closed for about 12 years. I think it closed in like 2008. And we got that, and it was on it's now getting busier now, but when we moved in, when we got the lease, there was no other restaurants there. It's on Angel Street, which is just continue. You know where it is, but it's
yeah.
So now, since we moved in there, there's Uno Mas, Lucky Tortoise, Big Fan Bao, and there's another two Asian restaurants open up just across the street. So, and then we've got Chubaru beside us. But like before, that street had nothing on it.
And was that when you opened there? Was that kind of on your mind? Like, was that a worry almost that, like, Christ, we're maybe just too far off the beaten track?
No, because essentially the way Dublin works, it's like a main artery out of Dublin. So you've got like Georgia Street, and then it runs, and then there was kind of a barren space because a lot of the space had been bought up by developers to develop hotels and stuff, which they're now developing. So a lot of that space had been dead, but it's kind of just Georgia Street, and then it stopped, and then it didn't pick up again until Wexford Street and Camden Street, which is obviously like the busiest street in Dublin. So it was just, you know, there's a kilometer long strip there that connects those two. It's the same road. So, I mean, it made sense. It's just continuation. And it's kind of now, well, I mean, once we get back to normal, there will be enough restaurants there that it's going to be kind of one of those places that you go, as opposed to saying, I'm going to go to Chimac. You'll be like, I'm going to go down to that place where there's loads of restaurants and I'll choose them, which is like great. You know, high tide raises all boats, and I'm a big believer in that.
Yes, for sure. Very good. That's really interesting. And I'd love to get your opinion on that exact point, which is, and just to jump ahead a little bit, that old adage of location. Obviously now we live in an Instagrammable world, right? And you know, you can kind of hear and find out about people without necessarily having to, you know, be on the main street. And you'd be very popular on Instagram. So where do you see that in terms of like how important is location, and then maybe just a little bit about social media marketing as well?
I think location is pretty important for us. Like we developed Chimac and the whole, we knew like maybe if we wanted to develop one shop that was just our own thing, that we wanted to just be one shop and it was going to be like a bistro and we were going to run it. Maybe location isn't that important. Like you see Michael's in Mount Marion, which is like, it's an amazing restaurant. It's busy all the time, but it's not, it wouldn't be in the same like scalable way that Chimac is. We thought for us that it was important to be in the city center just so we could, if we want to expand from there, it's like Dublin's built like a web, there's no circular public transport. It all goes into the middle. So if you're in the middle, you can go anywhere. If you take yourself out of the middle, you can only go to a little few bits of the web. So that's kind of the way that we thought about it. That was our thinking when we were opening. And then in terms of social media, like our social media is really, really good. So Sofie, my partner, she handles all that. She's got a background in branding and marketing, and she's incredible at that stuff. I usually steer clear. And then also her little brother, Max, is an amazing photographer. He also works with me in the kitchen, and he is in charge of, he's essentially a dessert chef and does all our amazing ice cream sandwiches and also takes all our amazing photos. So that's just like a very handy to have someone who can take incredible photos and also have someone who can direct. I mean, I'm learning as I go from those two, but like they kind of handle that side of everything.
Excellent.
I just get told to produce food, and then I make it and they take pictures.
Well, it tastes good. And on that point, and maybe a bit of a chefy question here, and I'm almost embarrassed to ask this question, it's a bit silly, but how do you get your chicken so crispy?
So we actually have so the way we get it so crispy is we twice fry everything. So one of the things that I like when I went over to Korea, everything is twice fried. They use a lot of starches in the batter, so a lot of potato starch, which we use some of, but I think if you use too much potato starch, it kind of actually gets a bit, it soaks up the flavors from everything around it, so it can taste a bit stale, but essentially it's twice fried. So one of the main problems that I always had with fried chicken from anywhere that you get it before, I always loved the idea of fried chicken, and like looking at fried chicken, I was like, that looks class, I want to eat that. But when you go to eat it, it generally can be a bit soggy or a bit like, it's like you're deep frying something. You're making it, it's supposed to be crispy. That's the whole point of deep frying.
Yeah, of course.
So when I went over to Korea and had the fried chicken there, it was a revelation, obviously. It's certainly changed my life. But yeah, so twice frying gives you that, because you kind of set the batter and everything the way you want it, and then once you give it that second quick fry at a high temperature, it really just crisps everything up.
Class. Just to touch on a point you made there, Garret, about you said when you opened originally, scalability was something on your mind, and obviously your background being in Bunsen, who have kind of a group now spread across the country, right? And also nationally, I believe I heard that they're in Spain recently. I want to ask you on that point, Gareth, which is, talk to me a little bit about, I suppose, about scaling and the potential to scale Chimac, and what would be your thinking there?
Yeah, well, like I've always been kind of like I've always been pretty like nerdy, and like kind of one thing that really, it's a weird thing to be interested in, but I really am interested in processes and how things are process driven. Like I love, like if anyone ever works in like a factory or something like that, I'm like, I need to talk to that person for hours. I want to know how you make things streamlined.
Yeah, me and you both.
Yeah, so that's always been like kind of a big like interest of mine, is like is manufacturing and how these things work and how you can apply it to a kitchen. And yeah, so like that's definitely something that I'm like, that I've always been interested in, and it always kind of like, I'd get like I like making things more efficient, and I like making things run smoother. So it's definitely something that I would always just take into. It's definitely something that I would try and teach any chef who's working for me, and it's definitely something that I would try and instill in them. It's just like trying to organize yourself, trying to work as neatly and as efficiently as possible. And then, so that kind of just bleeded into when we were thinking about setting up Chimac, when I was recipe testing, when I was doing all these things, I was like, well, I want it to also run like this, and I want to be in there and run it, but then I also want to be able to teach people how to do it very easily. And what's the simplest way to teach things? Like, what if you're making a recipe and you've got, like, I don't know, like the way I look at it is like you start off with something very complicated, and then you would like look at what are the things that like make it work actually, and then you start pairing back from there, and you make it simpler and simpler until you have something that is like really good but also simple, and you can teach someone how to do it very easily.
Yeah, it's a fine balance, right? Because like if you want to have that mentality of kind of, you know, like having a simple process, you know, you could come up with a very simple, you know, ready-made sandwich that you just fly out. But obviously, you're balancing, as you're saying, coming up with a very good quality product and also making it simplified and process driven. So it must be a challenge.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of something, I suppose, on that aspect, it is challenging, but it's kind of a challenge that I'd like. You know, if there's ever kind of some work like that to do, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll spend 100 hours a week doing that. I don't mind. I prefer to do that than, like, I don't know, to 10 hours of paperwork, to be honest with you. That's kind of stuff that I enjoy, and just figuring out how things work. Like, I remember before we opened Chimac, I had like a plan done out in my living room of where everything was, with tape, and like, so like where the fryers would be, where the fridge would be, how things would work, and distance between, and trying to organize, make a plan as to how to make it as efficient as possible, which obviously the second you open, that kind of gets thrown out the window and things change and you realize this doesn't work there. But anyway, a good thought process to do that kind of gets you in the way of thinking. Maybe it probably won't work out like that, but I found that definitely helpful to put you in the mindset.
Deadly, very good. That's very fascinating. It's a bit like the kind of, I don't know if you watched the McDonald's movie with Ray Kroc, where they set out everything like that.
Yeah, put it in a tennis court. Yeah, I like that movie. It's good.
Very good. So moving on a little bit, or not moving on. Sorry. What and this is probably completely changed in the 2020 year we've had, but what was the growth plan then? Like, was there a growth plan then in terms of scalability? Were you looking at replicating Chimac and opening more locations?
Yeah, we were. We were probably, if things hadn't happened the way they would, I suppose we probably would have been looking to open up another one. You see, I don't know. It's tough to say, because I mean, I suppose it's the way of any economy ever, is that, like, if we had stayed open and everything was grand and we've done really well this year, and then we can go and get these, we can go and open up another one, it probably would have been too expensive to open up another one. But now, as it is, I don't know, there's definitely opportunities out there, and we're definitely looking at opening some more. Like, we'd probably be maybe looking at another one in Dublin. I personally, well, obviously not at the moment, but I really like Galway. I really like Cork. I would love to be forced to spend a lot of time down there. Yeah, I'm born and bred in Dublin, and it's kind of the only place I've ever lived in Ireland. But I really like Galway. I've never got a chance to spend any more time than like a week down there. Same with Cork, same with Limerick, same with these places. So I would actually love to be able to live there for a few months or on and off or whatever. So it's definitely something that we'd be interested in.
Very good. That's obviously I'm from Galway, so I have a lot of my listeners will be Galway based, so I'm sure they'd be glad to hear that. But just another maybe a strange question, but in terms of you said opening another one in Dublin. This is one thing I'm always interested in with places I'm working with, and that's kind of have an idea of kind of like a maximum amount of I suppose venues you can have in the one area, right? Is that something that you've ever given thought to? Like you see other places in Dublin, and obviously it's a big area with lots of complete separate districts almost. Like, Have you ever given any thought to that? Like, how many Chimacs could you have in Dublin realistically before you'd probably start to have to look at maybe going more nationwide?
I think that it depends. Again, that is a question of location. Like being from Dublin City, just in Rathmines, that's where I'm from. And if you look at like, you know, there's so many, there's 4 Bunsens in town, but like,
yes, yeah.
say it takes me probably the same. Like if I was to say, if I'm in Rathmines in my parents' house and I have to go to the shop is, you know, is around the corner. It might be 500 meters away. And if I'm in Angel Street in Chimac and I think about going to Stephen's Green, that's still only 500 meters away. But in my mind, conceptually, because I'm going past so many places, that seems like a lot further away. So I think you have the same thing in town. When things are built up and there's lots of things everywhere, even if it's only 500 meters, it's like, I think your brain just says like, oh, that's really far away, because you're going to pass so many things on the way there, that it kind of makes it, you can put things closer together. It doesn't really affect business that much, is what I'm trying to say.
I get you. That's very interesting.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things like that. But yeah, like Bunsen have a bunch of them open in town, and when they were doing that, I thought that was a bad idea, but it's obviously I was wrong, and it's worked out pretty well for them. But yeah, like I think that I probably would look to expand maybe out in the just outside the city centre or something like that for the next one.
Looking at more franchising, the franchise route, is that ever something you thought about, or do you prefer like Bunsen, keeping it kind of company owned?
No, a guy approached me about doing a franchise in a place in somewhere in Europe, but to be honest with you, if you're going to give someone like your life's work and you have to package it for them and you have to do it, like doing a franchise would only make sense if someone's like, I'm going to open up 100 of these and I'm going to give you so much money. Otherwise, you're going to be there putting together the pack that like they will use for it, and that will take you so long to put together, and they'll still probably mess it up, and you're only opening up one other place. You know, it just wouldn't make sense, as opposed to you just opening up another one and running it yourself. Right. I think that the amount of work that would need to go in to get to package everything that's in your head and in your business to give to them, and then for it to be so simple that they wouldn't fuck it up, that would just be too difficult, I think.
Yeah. Right, excellent, very good. Looking at going back to the past kind of couple of months we've had, and your own business, and you said you're obviously, like most places now, you're doing a lot of takeaway. Has I suppose your model changed since the pandemic, and what are you looking at going forward into the future?
I think that like delivery has definitely become a way bigger focus for us, and that's obviously something that I suppose it's difficult to tell what's going to happen in the future, but I think that it will be something that probably, we actually just started on delivery just before the pandemic started last January. So we've been on it for 13 months now, and we were already doing there was actually quite this. I think that the business has probably grown. Like we've essentially opened up a new business, which is, you know, delivery, Chimac at home, which is going well. But like I think that I don't think that business is going to be. It's going to obviously be affected by when everything reopens, but I don't think it's going to be hugely affected. I think people will want to order in a lot. I think that's a part of the business that is going to stick with us. I think that the restaurants will open again. People will still want to come to restaurants, but I think the delivery side is there for a while anyway.
Excellent. That's really good to hear. And let's finish up on this one, Garret. And I really appreciate your time. that is, I suppose, advice that you would give to either, I suppose, a younger you before you open Chimac, or maybe even kind of a budding restaurant owner, someone that wants to open up their own restaurant? Like, what one piece of advice would you give them?
There's obviously all of the old cliches of, work hard, etc., etc. I would say that for something like me with Chimac and my career to date, I obviously worked as a brewer, and I worked in fast casual restaurants, and that was the volume kitchen was always the thing that interested me.
Yeah.
I was never worked in fine dining, never worked underneath Michelin star chefs, which was never something that I was interested in. Sometimes I regret that, but it's just something that I wasn't interested in, so I never saw the calling. So I remember when I first opened up Chimac, I'd have other friends or people that I know who would have and I'd been working on recipes for Chimac and working on how it would work for maybe 3 years at that stage, just over 3 years. And I think that sometimes I would listen to someone over myself because they had such a better CV than me. But when actual fact, if I was looking at it objectively, who knows more about this guy knows more about cooking than I do, but who knows more about fried chicken? I do. So I mean, just having sticking to your guns and not even believing in yourself, because that's like an easy thing to say and it's easy to believe in yourself, but it's actually when you come across someone who you respect and you respect their opinion, to actually maybe not just listen to their opinion and be like, well, actually, can I look at it objectively and be like, which person do you think you should trust? And I think you should trust yourself a bit, I think.
Excellent. Love it. Garret, that is as good a place to leave it as we could do.
Perfect.
Thanks a million. Honestly, I really enjoyed chatting to you. It was very
Thank you so much.
Nice one.
And let us know anytime you're back up in Dublin and we can meet up and eat some fried chicken.
Yeah, 100%. And maybe we can try the froze as well.
Yeah, definitely do. Yeah,
nice one.
Have a few frozes, get a bad hangover.
Lovely, Garret. Thanks a million. Talk to you soon.
All right, cheers. Thanks very much.
Thanks for watching the Business of Restaurants podcast with me, Evan O'Callaghan. For new episodes every single week, subscribe below.